Well, as I mentioned earlier when I dropped in here, first and foremost, don't be scared by the sheer amount of slides. I try to do a different thing when it comes to animations, so I really went down that rabbit hole. But basically, today we're going to talk about my fictional company that travels along with me. I'm called by my friends King of the North. So my fictional company has been Royals of the North then from that. But basically, it's going to be about how they handle the pandemic, starts to ramp up their security and collaboration. Okay, now you can see that. Yeah, okay, so I'm Simon Ågren, King of the North. I live up north in Sweden with the polar bears and the snow, and I work at Advania. And I work at a specialist unit named Knowledge Factory as a chief technical architect. And I do a lot of consulting, mostly architectural and advisory work, somewhere where productivity and security intersects. And I'm a Microsoft MVP within security nowadays. I do a lot of Microsoft 365 stuff as well. And on a personal note, I'm a proud father of 2 boys. I'm an avid golfer since a young age, and also been preparing now for the Swedish Championships this weekend in golf long drive. So hitting the ball as far as possible. So it's going to be exciting. Okay, I know it's a little bit too early, but I have made this a Christmas themed session because it was a really serious title and I wanted to make it more of a lighthearted approach. And secondly, my mother company, Advania, they have decided to adopt a new client in their commercials, and it's actually Santa. So yeah, so prepare for a few dad jokes and some Christmas references or two. And today I will become an employee of the company Royals of the North Pole. You see what I did there? And I'll give you a background of what we have done to ensure a sound environment to work within, and also have a look at a very secret project and also a collaboration project. It's going to be more from the end user side of things, how things look at, and also why and why not we should do some stuff. It's not going to be too deep dive into the technical stuff. We could take that some other time. So Royals of the North Pole is a manufacturing company and a distribution company known to deliver overnight. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, basically. We got the CEO, his name is Santa, and we got the helpers that are working in the factories, in the offices, and also remotely from time to time. We also got the reindeers that's out in the fields doing sales. So the journey this far, the pandemic hit, we needed to stay at home, we needed to wear masks. It was a different ballgame. And we rushed out teams, we ensured that people could work from home, and we quickly realized that the only constant was the user identity. We were connecting from different places, we were using different devices. So we decided to ramp up the identity and device baseline according to zero trust principles. The next step was to roll out Microsoft Defender for Identity, Endpoint, Office 365, and even Defender for Cloud Apps then. So there were still a few things on the wish list. So we wanted to be able to collaborate with people outside of the organization in a good way. And we also wanted to prevent oversharing and ensure that only there was no unauthorized access to our content. And I'm going to do a visualization now of how we thought about things, really, and the cloud there on the left represents our environment. And as I said, our users is going to be our own employees and also people outside of the organization. It could be guests, it could be externals as well. And they're connecting with different devices. It could be managed by us as an organization, but also unmanaged devices. And what I mean by that is private devices, but also it could be some other organizations' devices that are being managed by them. So we have no control over those devices. So it's a big challenge. And it's everything from tablets, mobile phones, and also laptops and computers, I'm sorry, I don't know why my voice is cracking up so much. But really, we need a strategy for both. So we can't only care about our own things. We also need to manage the stuff that comes in if we let them. So one thing that could help us is conditional access. It's a layer between our users and our services and, our devices as well. And it allows us to determine if someone is allowed access or not and how they're allowed to access it. And for our own employees, we've decided to manage both the devices and the mobile phones. We only require MFA when needed, so we don't want to fatigue them. We use risk signals in identity protection for that. And we also ensure that it's compliant, that the devices are compliant before we let them in as well. And the unmanaged devices, as I said, we have no control over how well they are, if they contain viruses, etc., etc. So we allow them into the environment, but we say, okay, you could enter via the browser session. You cannot use the client applications for this, because we reduce the attack surface here, and we could control the browser session with Defender for Cloud Apps as an additional layer of security and decide what the unmanaged devices could do in our environment. And when we are inside of Microsoft Teams here, we collaborate, we share files. It's basically about preventing the oversharing and access control here. So we use some features in Microsoft Purview. It allows us to classify, protect our content, and also educating and guiding our users. So sensitivity labels, we have both used them for Teams, container labels, and we have used them for files and emails as well. So when you apply a sensitivity label to a team, the Microsoft 365 group, and the SharePoint site is going to get the settings that we have defined. It could be if we allow guests or not, do we allow external sharing, unmanaged devices, etc. And when we apply a sensitivity label to the files, it's going to be encrypted when we need to. It can also manage access management as well. And the good thing is that that protection travels with the document if it's being downloaded and forwarded, etc. And as a complement, we have used data loss prevention to prevent oversharing of our most sensitive content, Okay. This is a very secret Project Chimney. I have no clue what they're doing, really. It's a real enigma. Only project members should be able to access the content in here, period. The PM wants to keep the chimney really tight and closed, and it should be in no way it should be able to be shared externally. And we also want to classify and protect the content and make sure that it's only being used internally and not outside of the project itself, because it's even sensitive internally. So it leaves us with these challenges. We want to restrict access to the project, we want to protect the content, and we want to prevent sharing outside of the project. So here we are in Microsoft Teams, and we have assigned a label here. So it's a private team. Why doesn't the animation work? Okay, so it's a private team. There's no guest allowed in the team. There's no external sharing allowed, and only owners can share the files and the SharePoint site itself. So the project members are not going to be able to do that. And only managed devices are allowed inside of this. But here we are as a trusted employee, Reindeer, and we come from a managed device. So there's no problem for us to access the files. And we have created a custom sensitivity label for this project called Project Chimney here. So it only allows access to the people inside of the project, and it also encrypts. And if we have a look now at creating a new document, if we write something product specific now, because I've just used the product name as the example. Yeah, what we will see in a few seconds here is that it's going to auto apply a label here. So this is something that has been done on the client side of things as in the sensitivity label. Animations. Okay, let's say you have a document with project specific content that is not labeled and you would upload this into this project as well. So what will happen is that, in a few seconds, this is going to also be labeled. And this is something that happens when the data is at rest. It's an auto labeling policy that we have created separately as well. Okay. Animations when I uploaded this. Okay, sorry about this. Let's go with it. So when you try to share things as a project member, you are only going to be able to use this people with existing access. And this is a good thing that you're able to do this. You're not going to be able to share to people outside of the project, but you're going to be able to copy the link and also provide it to someone else in the project if you need to, in the chat or in a conversation or something. And data loss prevention has been around as well to show you that this is sensitive content. And if we look at this, we're going to be prompted, where we're going to be displayed with this more generic message that this cannot be shared outside the organization. But we could also have our own policy tips here. And this is how it looks in Microsoft Teams. It's going to look the same in SharePoint if you have defined that policy tip that you're not allowed to share this information outside the organization, right? And this is also how it looks in Word. So you're being very apparent with how things should work, and you make it easy to the user to understand what you're allowed to do or not to do. But if you still haven't understood anything and you try to share this externally, it doesn't matter if you write this project specific content in a message or if you try to share the file. It's not going to go too well for you. So this is being blocked, and if we look at this, you're going to be shown the same policy tip as earlier. And what you can see here is that you're not allowed to override this and provide business justification. You could do that in this policy if you want to, but in this case, we are so, this is so tight and secret, so we're not allowing them to do this. So it's an option. Okay, so we're pretty safe now in the cloud, right? But the user could still download the document. There are ways to manage so they cannot download stuff, but that's not good for collaboration. You can't open them in some certain applications, etc. So you could do whatever you want on the desktop now, right? But I've used Endpoint data loss prevention here to prevent print for this project specific information, And I also used that you can't copy in Edge browser. And this is also one thing with OneDrive. If you try to download this and sync this project-specific information to your OneDrive and try to do a workaround, it's going to block this as well. But all the other stuff you're able to use and sync to your OneDrive. And also prevented that you cannot download it and then upload it to Dropbox or some other locations. What you still could do is you could upload this to SharePoint and Teams. I wanted to allow that, or else it's going to be problems, right? So in theory, you could download this, you could place it in another project or something, right? But what I've done is I've created a DLP policy. So it doesn't matter if you upload something with a label or without a label. It's going to find that content and it's going to block it and label it and ensure that you cannot use this outside of the project. So this is in a different team. So basically, this is a very extreme example of how you could utilize the tools to make it very, very tight. Not that it might suit your situation, but it's good that you know how it could work at least. Okay, so we have used sensitivity labels for containers for the team. No guests and no sharing with guests, and unmanaged devices are not allowed to access the files. We have encrypted the content, created a specific sensitivity label for that. So it's only access to the project members. And we have also an auto labeling on the client side while you type in the document. Doesn't matter if it's in the client application or if it's in the browser. And also created an auto labeling policy for the data at rest if the labeling has been missed. Also limited via the sensitivity label that only the owners can share stuff, that the project members can only share with people that with existing content, and created a couple of data loss prevention policies, both for internal, external, and for the device itself. Okay, so now it's time for a huge party. We're gonna celebrate Diwali, Christmas, Hanukkah all at once. It's a big celebration for the ending of the pandemic. And this is still a bit secret, right? It's only between us. So it's important there are event partner or consultant that helps us with this event has insight into the entire project as a guest in the project. And it's going to be some confidential content that they're going to be able to open, but we also need to have some stuff very secret, and we need to segregate that content. And there also must be a smooth way for us to communicate with our suppliers, our caterers, our deliveries and things like that. So the challenges here is to allow guests under controlled conditions. We want to protect the project content in different ways, right? And also provide seamless collaborations for our externals. Once again, we're in Microsoft Teams here. We have another label. This is a private team still, but we allow guests, we allow external sharing, and this time members can share the content, but still site owners are the only ones who could share the site itself. This is a best practice, something that you should do. And private devices could access, unmanaged devices could access the file content, but only via the browser, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, I just want to show you that we do have a couple of channels here. We have a shared channel that we will look at a bit later. We have a private channel here as well. So I mentioned that we need to keep some stuff secret. So there's only a select few that are able to see this channel and enter this channel. And everything inside of this channel is gonna be labeled automatically to be highly confidential, that only internal employees can open, as you can see here. And we have solved this by using the default sensitivity label on the underlying SharePoint library, so that everything that gets created inside of this library is going to get this label automatically. Okay, if we go to a standard channel, in this case the general channel, and we just try to create a new document here, as we did previously. If we enter some product specific content there, this time it's not gonna auto label, it's instead gonna suggest. So it feels like this is product specific content, and you should probably label this with this type of label, as you can see here. And this allows us to change the label if we want to. So this might be a more common scenario for you. And why we're using this time is because this product specific content needs to be able to have different labels, right? The internal one, this one, and probably a couple else. Yeah, okay, that's the custom one that we created. And the thing is that we created this after the theme itself was created, which and I set this to everyone in this Microsoft 365 group should be able to access this. And this includes the guests as well, because they're a part of the Microsoft 365 group when they get invited. Okay, if you come in with an unmanaged device, doesn't matter if you're an internal employee or an external, I mean, a guest, you're going to be prompted with this, and this shows that Defender for Cloud Apps is monitoring the session. And if we now go in as a guest, we're not going to see the internal private channel, right? And we're not going to see the shared channel because we don't use guests in shared channels, it's externals. But as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be no problem to go in and open the document and see the content as a guest. And just to make things simple, we've used Defender for Cloud Apps here and session policies to ensure that you're not able to copy the content to make it easy. And you're not, sorry about that. Okay, I was showing that you're not able to download it as well. That's the main part of it. Let's jump further here. Yeah, this is where it is. The last thing I want to show you is the shared channel here. I don't know if you have tried it, but it's a super good thing when you set it up. It's a bit of a hassle to set up. But what we have done is we have created this channel. We set up cross collaboration with our vendors. And the good thing for them is they could just sit in their own environment like this in their own teams. They don't have the tenant switch. We don't need to get another guest user in our Azure AD to manage as well. And they could just sit and collaborate without needing to tenant switch. And we have set up trust as well. So the only thing that we require is that they have MFA'd in their own tenant for this. Okay, a little bit of recap here as well. We have used the sensitivity label for the team itself. We allow guests, we allow external sharing, we allow unmanaged devices from the web. We have used this sensitivity label for files, created a custom one from the project, which encrypts and gives access to the project members. And now the auto labeling on the client side, it only suggests. And we use the private channel to segregate some of the content for the most secret stuff. And we also used session policies to control the unmanaged devices, what they can do and cannot do. So they can't just download these project-specific things and take it somewhere else. Because we have no control over them, we can't use Endpoint DLP as we did in the previous project. So they could just grab the stuff and run away with it. And we also used a shared channel for the seamless integration and collaboration with our externals. And the only thing that we require is that they have MFA'd, and then they could sit in their own tenant, in their own teams, with their own teams, and just collaborate seamlessly. Okay, so these settings is not something that you should think about in isolation. The device team shouldn't think about, this is how it should work. The team working with teams shouldn't think about this. This should come from a governance strategy, and really try to think about it as you want things to operate. If you really want to allow unmanaged devices in your environment, okay, sure, that's one thing. How do you want it to work? Or do you want them to be able to access this information? What should they be able to do? Try to define that in words, how you want it to work, because then it's very easy to map that to technical solutions from the bigger perspective, from the high level, right? So when defining a governance strategy, it's important that the discussions are represented at the same time, both the need for collaboration and data protection and compliance. So if we focus solely on collaboration productivity, we're going to take unnecessary risks, right? And if we solely focus on security, we're going to miss out on these aspects where we need to share externally and things like that. So that's a bigger risk, because if we can't operate in a competitive way as a business, it's a bigger risk, right? But basically, write down how you work. You could do that in very different ways. But one example is to have representatives from business, some from legal, some from IT, sit down together and write how you work. Who should be able to see this information? What are the requirements for retaining the data? Write 1 to 2 pages. That's all you need, and balance the collaboration and data governance needs. And start focusing on the crown jewels. Don't try to protect everything at once. Start with the most sensitive things, often R&D stuff and things like that. So it's easier to consume this big problem if you start with the crown jewels, because it's so much data. It's going to cost a lot and give you a lot of overhead if you try to protect everything. And have a conscious thinking about where you want to use automation and where you get the most ROI from that. So make sure to use the modern tech stack. Use the Defender products where you get a lot of automation, and also when it comes to the overload of information we have, automation and AI should help us with this. And things such as identification, classification, AI should do that. And we can't really trust the user to do this. Not because they're not capable, because it's not scalable. They're not going to do this, right? But also make sure to keep things simple. I know I have shown you a lot of complex topics and a lot of different, technical solutions for this. But at the same time, it really has been about give a good policy tip. Ensure that the description for the label itself is very descriptive, and make sure to keep down the amount of labels. Make it easier for the user, and don't interfere with their work if they don't need to. So make it very suitable for our limited cognitive abilities as humans. Thank you very much. Sorry for my voice cracking up. I seem to be getting a cold or something. And some love for the animations, maybe.